formed into the mentality. So the mentality in this realm, what we're working with, is going to be dualistic. And that dualistic form created then the emotionality from it. And then, and only then, did the physicality come into being. All of that formed in consciousness prior to us coming into a human form.
But when this whole thing about let there be light,
Yes.
I mean, light, isn't light the very first manifestation of duality?
Light exists and is the essence of all that is. So it's not like light was created, I mean, light is. And from that, we made this downward spiral
Oh, okay.
into this reality.
It's like it's the uncreated light.
Uncreated.
Uncreated light.
I guess you could put it that way. If we can do it. We're here to uncreate.
No, I was just saying that it is, there's a term, the uncreated light, which would explain the fact that it hasn't been created. That it exists, that it sort of has always existed, you know.
Yes,
It's pre-existent, always existed.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So,
Not made.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah, not
right.
created by us. And
right, yeah.
When this came down into the physical, was that when the earth was created? I mean, is all this happening before it comes to the physical in another realm and
Yes.
another,
Yes,
the heavens?
yes, and not just
And,
the earth, everything we can see in the night sky.
Mhm.
If you can imagine how vast that is.
All physicality.
Yes. Yeah, and how it's all interconnected. We think of our, the physicality as being our bodies, our environment, our towns, our cities, our countries, our world, yet it's much more than that.
Right.
Did you want to say? Okay, do you want to do the next step? So that was step 2.
We're racing through this.
Somebody somewhere will be saying, can they get through the last 10 steps?
Step 3, knowledge. The third step to perfection is to come to the understanding of the law through application, which results in knowledge. Knowledge can only come from experience. Knowledge cannot be bought as an intellectual curiosity in the marketplace, but must be earned through the assiduous application of law. Knowledge can only be obtained through faithful compliance with the law.
Let's, anybody like comment on that? So what that is just basically saying is that it's not outside ourselves again.
Right.
It's not, we can begin to understand something by doing some physical law, which is reading a book, or doing the preparation work
Mhm.
before we come to a body electronics event.
Mhm.
Yet it's through experience within
That's right.
that we gain that
Well,
knowledge.
for example, when we first met Body Electronics, and it talked about love, love what you feel, or love the anger. I mean, you hear that, you say, how could that happen? And then of course when we came to the first intensive, we got a little bit more light on that. But this time, it's a little easier to understand
Yes.
because of, the
Your
point,
experience.
that's right, the
Yeah.
experience in between,
Yes.
Although yesterday when you explained it, when I tried to go back and capture the words you said, I said, oh, I won't need to write that down, it was so simple,
Mhm.
But then when I went back to try to recapture it, I couldn't quite
know that it's all within.
Yeah.
You can hear it from outside
Mhm.
as reminders, but all of it is within us, all of it.
I mean, it's along the same lines of Carol, because we do a lot of reading and talking and studying and
Yes.
have for many years, you know. And there's certain principles that I know intellectually, and then it's through, all of a sudden, you know, through various practices that we're doing, all of a sudden, for a moment, I know it's true from inside,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and then, even though I can't necessarily hold that emotional feeling, you know, make that continuous, I can get back to that when each time I think of that law, let's say, and apply it to different situations that I'm in at times, you know. And that's, I know, when I'm doing that, it's out of experience, I'm not pretending to know it
Yes.
or just quoting some words.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, it's like the violet flame right now, we've done a lot of violet flame decreeing. And there's always this thing that I know, something's not there.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm saying the words and I believe it, I believe the thing exists, I know it's there.
Mhm,
But just by saying, I mean, I think it seems to have been good to do the decreeing,
mhm.
but I know that I'm not experiencing that violet flame the way I'm saying I should. In other words, I know that it's not
Yes.
fully operational in me, and I could never tell anybody what the violet flame is off of my experience,
Yes.
because right now it's still mental.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's not
uh-huh.
But
experiential
it's
yet.
you know, so this is very good, you know.
Uh-huh.
Okay, step 4, temperance. The fourth step to perfection is understanding there are higher and lower laws and understanding when to apply them to oneself and to others. This is known as temperance. Wisdom dictates when one obeys a lower law or a higher law. Whenever a higher law is obeyed, it necessitates breaking a lower law with the corresponding penalty for breaking a lower law. A lower law should never be broken unless it is covered by obedience to a higher law. Temperance, then, is wisdom self-applied to a given condition, demanding attention, resulting in choices or alternatives of solution.
I think part of that is like, you can get locked into the preconception of a physical law
Mhm.
and then refuse to, when something higher comes in, so I'm breaking the law, can't do it,
Exactly.
you know, and get stuck
Mhm.
because you've made a prison out of the thing.
Out of
that
the
it-
lower laws.
That it doesn't need to be,
Mhm.
and I don't know, I just see
Yes.
that's a real problem.
And recognizing when a higher law is necessary,
Right, and that takes integrity, I mean, you gotta be honest with yourself.
Yes.
You can pretend.
to know
yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Uh-huh. A simple example is an emotional law is a higher law over a physical law. So an emotional, hurting someone's feelings to justify a lower law
Mhm.
would be breaking the higher law,
Mhm.
There you go.
you see? So, an example of that is, even within food, you know,
Mhm.
people become very adamant about food. But if sticking to something with food is going to be exclusionary,
Mhm.
then you are breaking a higher law to keep a lower law in place.
Mhm.
There's, St. Paul says something about that. I've forgotten what
Well,
it
it
is.
says that, you know, like, if you go somewhere, eat what they give you,
And be thankful for
out
it.
of hospitality.
Yes,
And then the other thing would be putting people through an agony to make sure your stuff is all done exactly the way you want it, and
Yes.
you know, whereas you might do that on your own time, where you're by yourself, but when you start getting involved with other people, to make a big deal about enforcing your things when it becomes an inconvenience to them would be a mistake in a certain kind of
Yes.
way.
Kindness goes a long way here.
Right.
Mhm.
Step 5, patience. The fifth step is patience. Here is where one lovingly and willingly allows the joyous antics of a free soul to move toward ultimate perfection, according to the dictates of his own conscience.
Should it be conscience?
It should.
Good.
His own conscious conscience.
It's a deal.
Trouble is, I am conscious of my conscience. Can I do that?
Okay, according to the dictates of his own conscience, at this own rate, and at this own rate of speed. Each pathway is planned to be traveled according to the unique rhythm of that individual traveler. The free agency of the soul is to be honored and respected and never denied as long as the actions do not interfere with the free agency of another.
So teach correct principles and allow everyone to govern themselves.
And that's hard to do with like your kids and stuff like that. Not to try to impose on them your
To be,
opinion, what their life should be like, or what they should be
to
doing.
be detached from the
Right.
outcome.
Right,
Mhm.
especially when they grow up, where you're not responsible.
Yes, children are a good practice for us.
Right. Step 6, brotherly kindness. The sixth step is brotherly kindness, which simply is the exercise of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is true as long as we can place ourselves fully into the viewpoint and understanding of the other with his or her expectations and conditions and his or her level of awareness of enduring ability to the experiences of life. Is that right?
Yes. In something that Doug would sum that up as is consider that we're not 4-year-olds giving our mother a train set. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't give what we want to have.
Oh.
We give what's appropriate
Yes.
Right,
for
right.
that individual.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Sometimes we misinterpret
Right.
that as what we would like. What we, imposing our things onto others.
Right. As we would like them to give us what's appropriate to us.
First of all, know what's appropriate to us.
There was this thing in Trudy's either yesterday or the day before where she went to this point where she was unhappy with a friend who she felt was judging her, and was judging her friend, which it was the later opening that Trudy was led into or found her
Yes.
way into, which has been something I've been thinking about ever since, because I realize now that all the self-righteous judge me about this,
Yes.
and they're bastards for doing that,
Uh-huh.
or something like that,
Yeah.
is that's this business of action and reaction. And it's this thing where you judge me, well, I judge you for being a judger.
As we look deeper, we'll find many, many, many layers of our own patterns.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, the thing I never was able to do was put myself in the position of the other person and realize they had a position of viewpoint, they had a path they had been traveling all this way that brought them right to that spot where we are looking at each other,
Yes.
and trying to, well, you shouldn't,
Mhm.
and so all of a sudden, there's another
Yeah, I had to take quite a broader view of that recently, because back in all our truth work stuff, I used to just take the aggregate of their, genetics and their experience, and make my judgment as to what their truth was based on that.
I see.
This life, and never thought about who they might be.
Uh-huh.
You know.
The accumulative effect.
Mhm.
Just read this one.
Yeah. Where are we?
7. Godliness. The seventh step is godliness, the ability to administer the law as a wise, conscious, loving. This is you put in there. Mother and a wise, conscious, loving father would administer to the law to his or her own children.
That could be explained in another way to say, we are at a certain level of conscious awareness. We reach to all beings who we know are not yet at that level of conscious awareness, to assist them to come forth
Mhm.
further along their path. Because we realize that without the ones who did that for us,
Mhm.
we would not be where we are. And that's a continuation. That's not from a place of authority. That's a continuum that occurs. And it occurs not only in the physical realm, but in the other realms that we do not consider physical. Those beings who reach toward us to lift us up. And we open ourselves to that so that we can be lifted up. So by knowing and using our discernment, I look at it as when I'm guided from within to assist another, then I move. No matter what I think about it. I may not want to do it.
Mhm.
With my personality, it may be a difficult thing to do. It may be, just something I have some resistance to, yet I do it. If I'm guided, if spirit guides me, I do it.
Mhm.
So there's, in developing that, there's many ways that we can go about doing it. At one point, unless there was a request, an actual verbal request from an individual, then I said absolutely nothing. So that was a law that I followed for a period of time. I found later that law to be quite rigid, because what that, although it was a law and it served me well during that period of time of learning, then I learned to go beyond that, and then go with that inner guidance, with that inner, you can say, if the spirit moved me,
Mhm.
I didn't require that person to ask.
Mhm.
I went ahead anyway.
Because you would be doing it without judgment
Yes,
and not looking over at somebody and saying, oh, that poor person needs help.
yes.
So it's
Yes.
like coming.
And see, that works in all ways, because the person could require help, but yet if you don't receive the inner guidance to give that help, you mind your own business.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
We don't decide who needs help or
Right.
who doesn't need help in the moment.
Also, that way, that person may be asking for help but not know it.
Yes.
Not be able to
The spirit
articulate.
can be, like I can go somewhere and the spirit of someone can just be screaming,
Yeah. Right.
and in that case, you do everything in your power.
Also, like what Trudy's saying with her friend, like having done the work she did on the table, where she first of all saw that friend was stuck by judging her, in a sense, and was making a mistake, then Trudy realized that she was also judging that person and hating her as a result, you know, and when she gets through that, she realizes that she can love that person exactly the way that person is at that time. She's more likely to be open to say the right thing at the right time to her in a way that would keep the way open for this other person to change, but never be coerced into changing,
Yes.
or to be thought that she ought to change when maybe she shouldn't. you
True
know.
service occurs when we can get ourselves out of the way.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, see that, first of all, I think I'm loving her, and wanting the best for her.
Yes.
And I have to go through then seeing the anger and then seeing myself wanting to slap her, only to slap her awake for her own good.
Right.
Then I have to go through the phase of seeing, I want to hurt her.
Yes. Yeah. All those judgment
All those-
patterns of,
yeah.
yeah. And thank you for that openness
Yeah, that was very.
and that honesty
that
for,
was
you know,
key
what,
teaching to others.
yes,
Yeah.
what each person does
Yeah.
and opens to
Mhm.
assists all the others.
Right.
Mhm. Is that complete for that?
No, it's really not.
All right. In this arena of responsibility, all is designed for the gradual release of the soul from the restrictions as one helps the other to help himself. One discipline loving until that individual can discipline oneself. One helps the individual because more proficient at the choice of his own interests, directing that interest until it encompasses every phase of life's activity without resistance.
So you're really, in sharing and being of service, you're also being of service to yourself and your own unfoldment. It's not a one-way street, it's always a two-way street.
Oh, yeah.
Step 8, charity. The 8th step to perfection is charity, the pure love of Christ, continually manifested through every outer act with no conditions or expectations. Only love is manifested, ever sustained and ever outflowing, with no judgment, as love can only come from non-resistance and discernment.
It speaks for itself.
Well, it does, but it's striking that, to me, that the manifestation of love in this quiet, subtle way, because I think of love as more dynamic, or seemingly more dynamic.
Expressive is what
Expressive.
you,
Expressive, yeah, expressive, that's the
Mhm.
better term.
yes, love is often silent.
You know what that reminds me of, because so much of our stuff has been Christian, you know, and we've been involved with the Mass and things like that. But this reminds me of that thing in the Mass where it says, do this in remembrance of me. The pure love of Christ continually manifested through every outer act with no conditions or expectations. Do this in remembrance of me. We have just heard that so much.
This
Yes.
gives meaning to it.
No, 1 Corinthians 13.
Can you say that, Bert?
I can't.
Ready for 9? Step 9. The 9th step is humility. One is humble when there is no longer separation, but a recognition from a multi-dimensional point of view and a multiple viewpoint of consideration that all is one. That all is one continuous, uninterrupted cause of life, which is simultaneously cause and effect, and there are no mistakes. All is perfect divine order. This is the beginning of understanding the true position of unity in diversity.
Isn't it interesting, I mean, I think this is right, I feel this, everything that people read, at least for me, was applicable, it was very perfect for me to read. I see Carol crying.
Yeah.
Because God is all planned. It's all has purpose and it's all connected.
When we transmute a lot of that emotionality and begin seeing in a more expanded awareness, there's multiple things going on at once. So each sentence you hear someone say could be interpreted and in many, many, many ways. Of course, the Bible is written that way.
Yeah.
And you know, that is, you know, the same with these books. And every time I've went back to look at the Bible, I have seen it in a whole new light.
Right, right.
Yeah.
You know, well, the thing is, when you, if you look at a modern translation, the guy, you know, got his own modern translation, what the guy will inevitably do is put his individual understanding in there
Yes.
and eliminate the other 14 possible meanings, and just put his one, the one part that he got.
Yes.
So thank you for the gospel according to what you got.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I just recently went to a funeral and listened to that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, they used King James for the gospel and for the epistle. Somebody had modified some of the Psalms, which, you know, we heard a lot for years. You know.
So what translation, Bert, would you feel?
King James, utterly phenomenal. A friggin' God only knows how that happened. There was these guys. They needed a Bible for the English people, and they had all these different ones, and they needed one single Bible for everybody. So he said, we gotta get this translation. And so he set all these guys, a committee of people, to go through and do this. And like, it was like phenomenal, because they were just pragmatically, one, trying to translate it as directly as they could from the Latin, which was Jerome had translated from the Greek. And they had to get it sounding good, and that that it was beautiful, and you would enjoy reading it. And they did it. It was like
There was like 20 of them, 29 something.
yeah, it was, and they were just practical, pragmatic guys. They weren't scholars. They weren't divines. They weren't, you know, churchmen or anything. They did it. It's just nobody's ever been able to come close.
The thing about humility, the thing that strikes me is like, it's not something you can just lump up in yourself. And that once you got past all your judgments and all of and you really were to sense your connection with the one, it would just be there.
It's a natural.
Because you couldn't feel higher than anybody else.
Yes.
You,
At a certain point, we realize
yeah.
through experience that we are one, and that all comes from oneness, that there's no separation, there's no exclusion. We see that in all the levels that we work with too, in the physical level, we know that we have physical connection. It's been scientifically proven. Emotionally, we know there's morphogenetic resonance. We see this in the work of body electronics when we transmute something and someone else also has those benefits. We know that we are connected emotionally. We know that we are connected mentally. When a dualist, when a duality is fully transmuted, the outer changes. And the outer changes for all of us, not for that person who transmuted that duality. It's for all of us.
That's right, so, like, you know, I mean, in 1969, I marched on Washington, you know, to get change. Because I didn't have anything else to do either.
Thank you.
Think nothing of it. But now I feel like
Shorten the
that.
word for me.
But now I feel like the work we do in body electronics is just, or is more important than, for example, when I marched on Washington. I mean, there were 800,000 people there. And of course, it had the potential to be very violent and things like that. But you don't really have to march on Washington.
I guess that's the physical law, which cannot be denied.
Okay.
So the external, we do if the spirit moves us to move it externally, to move physically, we do so. Yet, as we move deeper up the scale of emotions and higher in the laws, we go one place and one place only, and that's within. We go, so nothing can be compared. Everything has its place
Okay.
under the sun.
Uh-huh.
It's not this nor that. It's everything in the right moment. Everything builds upon itself. Consciousness, you can see that within your own experience, within body electronics, because things move rapidly when we're doing that work. So we can see that within ourselves, how it begins to change, how consciousness changes. That's what we're here to do. We're here to change consciousness from within out. Then we don't have to march. We don't have to do those things any longer. That's where the physical laws cease to exist.
There.
You just answered your own question.
Okay.
Diligence, step 10. The 10th step to perfection is obtained after the conquest of each of the prior steps toward perfection. The 10th step is diligence. One cannot be truly diligent, therefore one cannot be truly responsible until all steps are mastered in sequence, indicating mastery of our linear thinking capacity, and then finally as a mastery of our hologramic oneness, encompassing the appropriate simultaneous yin-yang activity in each event in life as it is served up sequentially and hologrammically as a condition demands. Responsibility, therefore, is the qualities of perfection appropriately applied in our lives, individually and collectively, as we love, communicate, and create while we dance the dance of life. So again, what you spoke of earlier, Dennis, with the going through the steps and not missing any, not jumping any, but yet not being too fixated on one or the other. Allowing there's a flow here. So it's not to delete diligence from our activity, because we're only working on,
Right.
you know. So the hologramic experience comes in by encompassment. So, we can apply these in order, yes, but not to, I would say, take all 10 as possibilities
Mhm.
and maintain those possibilities at all times while working within.
Right. You know, it seems to me like even something like humility, you can sort of work toward it, you know, you can try and see where you aren't,
Yes,
and
Yes.
intellectually try and get yourself in a position where you know, you-
well, let's take out that word trying.
yeah,
As long as we're trying, we're using brain power. And brain power will never get us through these 10 steps.
I got you,
Yeah.
Is that what the thing is about, trying?
right,
Trying is brain power.
Trying is a judgment.
trying is trying.
No, it's-
Try as we might.
Humility is accomplished by admitting.
Partially, in the beginning.
Admitting where you're not humble first.
Well, that's what we're doing here
Yeah,
in body electronics. We are, in a sense, admitting, when we get on that table, we're admitting we have things to work with.
It's a humbling experience to
Yes.
really climb on the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as we release what's there in form of judgments, then when we come off of the table, we don't even have to think of humility anymore. It's present. The humility is.
right.
There's no gaining humility. There's no working toward humility as we encompass our judgment patterns with love and forgiveness.
And boy, that word humility, I don't know about other people, but that was just a word I could not understand at all. What could humility possibly mean and how would it apply in my life? And I just remember, because there's one of the steps in the program, of AA, which is humbly asking to remove our shortcomings. And so I could see that maybe I might have some shortcomings that need to be removed, but what would the humbly part be?
The asking.
The asking.
Just the simple
Just
asking,
the
okay.
acknowledgement of the need
Right.
to ask is a humbling experience.
Yes.
And then when it don't happen and you have to ask again, that's part of the humbling part.
Yeah.
Well, that can become a loop. So, truly in asking, if we only ask once, and with our whole self, and just move toward, that's the believing is seeing. So if we ask with the knowing that what we ask for will be provided in perfection, without our interference of having to have it on a time frame or an agenda of how it should look or any of those things, but trust, coming into full trust that it will be given in perfection. That's the trust that we go with on the table when we lie down there and make that prayer in the beginning of the trust that what is given to us in that session will be in perfection for us, no matter what it looks like. At times we can feel very overwhelmed and wonder, is this too much for me to handle? Yet our trust knows that no, it isn't. It isn't too much for me because I've been given it. So I take what I've been given and I work with it.
That makes me think, going back to affirmations, because you the one time and you feel it and you pray it, and then you trust. But if you're adding on to that the affirmations, is that a sign of not trusting? Or is
If it comes with its judgment patterns, yes. Yeah. It's attempting to put our agenda into the mix. So the agenda of the mind, the agenda of the dualistic thinking, the judgment,
That's why it needs to come up from the heart.
yes.
because it's not on the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, David said, a broken and contrite heart thou wilt not despise, referring to God.
Uh-huh. Say that again, Vern.
David said, a broken and contrite heart thou wilt not despise.
Mm. So we love all parts of ourselves on the table.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Well,
And
he was talking about God's relationship to us.
Mm.
He's saying that God will not despise a broken and contrite heart.
In other words, we don't have to go to God and say, well, hey, look, you know, I ate organic food for breakfast.
Yeah, why not?
And, you know,
Let's get some payout here.
said my prayers, paid my tithe.
Bring it on.
You know, what's happening here?
You can always ask for help.
Loving all, I interpret that as loving all aspects of ourselves.
Mhm. And be willing to see where you're at.
Mhm.
Did you need help?
Yeah, and that it's okay.
Yeah.
We can be perfectly okay
Right.
with exactly the way we are. Yeah, not the way we think we should be, or
Right.
the way we feel like if we only had this, this, and this, we would be this.
Yeah.
But what we are right now, right in this very moment.
You know,
You know, that just helps so much. I mean, because really, the whole thing is all about judgments. I'm not making it, they're not making it, we're not making it.
Yes.
It ought to be this, it ought to be that, we're not gonna get there soon enough.
Mhm.
It's just constant.
All the fears.
Yeah,
We can find all of that in 49 levels of emotionality. 25 past 10.
I like the lyrics in one Leonard Cohen song. He said, everything has a crack so that the light gets in.
Yes.
yeah. There we go.
Yeah, we can always look for that crack.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to speak just briefly on dependent, independent, interdependent.
Mm.
And in relation to the principle in body electronics of the justification, purification, and sanctification. So when we are dependent, we have those patterns within us of that dependencies. We look at that in terms of justification. And that is basically why we're creating those dependencies in the first place, because we feel much more comfortable in our justifications. This is what we're leaving behind in body electronics.
Mhm.
We are leaving that level of consciousness, and we're moving into independence, which is the purification process. So what we're doing in body electronics, by point holding or by working with it in our life,
Mhm.
becoming consciously aware of it moment to moment, that's the purification process. By feeling our emotions and by applying the emotional laws, by loving, by forgiving oneself, then we are in that process of purification. That is the place where we become independent. Within that level of independence, we move then to sanctification. And what sanctification is in body electronics definition is then we are at the place where we can then assist in a broader scale. In other words, we're not just working on our own craft, we actually have the ability, the response ability to assist others in working on their craft. But until we get through the first two layers, we're fooling ourselves. We can attempt to serve, but that service will be wrought with our own resistance. And just the expectations that you read earlier, Tom, described that perfectly out of textbook.
And also it's overwhelming. For me, I remember when I first got in and like was leaving this old life behind me that included the various addictive substances and stuff.
Yes.
Well, I had received a certain amount of help and had, and when I would try to pass it on to somebody, I would very soon get I would get over my head, because what they had going on, I couldn't understand. I couldn't help them toward their transmutation of it, and then they overwhelmed me, and I would get negative about what they were, you know?
Yes,
So
it becomes a cycle of resistance.
it was very limited. I find now that a lot of times I can talk to somebody who, I just have more strength. More strength in my own self. I don't get overwhelmed with that stuff that's coming at me.
The trick is to know when, where, and who.
Yeah.
Because there's always beings that we can assist. There's always ways in which we can assist. They may not just be the ways that we think are appropriate. You know, so that's where we just move from our inner guidance. We know when we are in over our head, like you described. We know that. And the best thing to do at that point is to withdraw. And to, be, I'm sorry, but at this time, I'm not clear in the way that I can serve you in this moment, so I'm going to go and work on my own stuff for a little while longer and look for that clarity. So going back to the purification, always looking within ourselves, to get to the place where we can serve appropriately. That's what responsibility is, the appropriate participation in life. It's not about authoritarianism. Whenever we get into this idea that service has something to do with authoritarianism, then we know we're off track. We can go back to the purification and work through that a little bit more. Do you want to say something, Tom?
Yeah, I've had this experience of like, I think, initially when we had this thing in the 12 steps where somebody's helped you, so now you have to give it back, you know? And for a long time, it was like mimicking what somebody else had done to us. And sometimes that was appropriate and sometimes it wasn't. And I'm beginning to find now that, because we've been given a lot as a group, our group of coin holding, and we've studied together, talked together, and helped each other a lot. And there's some people that I like that call me, and I'm beginning to see, I don't have to tell them everything. And I'm getting a sense sometimes that what they need to hear, what they're looking for, if I can give it to them, I do, and that's and it works out really well. That I can listen, and I'll know what, how much to share and what might be useful to that person based on stuff that I've gone through that I know.
Yes.
And very often, and then I don't have to say this principle or that principle or anything like that, but I can help them. Yeah, that happens,
Yes.
I guess, in time.
What's appropriate in that moment
Right.
for that person.
Right.
But what happens more to me is not getting to the intuition or following it when I get it, and overstepping and and then I see it's coming out of personality, it's coming out of not the place that can help. And then, but usually after that I can feel this thing in here that says,
Yes.
I'm gonna throw up, you've done it again, or, something.
Well, it's
It's
not a place where we can do a continuous loop of self-chastisement. It's really just a learning.
Yeah.
And we can make a mistake, but let's see if we can make a new mistake tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just, they're not truly mistakes. They're processes on our path.
Right.
And,
That's it.
That's the kind of the thing that we're learning now, coming whole thing of continual chastisement and
Yes,
stuff.
uh-huh.
And so it's very relieving
Uh-huh.
that we don't.
Yeah, loop in the same pattern. We can see that pattern, we can love that pattern, and we can release that pattern.
There we go.
Move on to
Yeah,
something,
Yeah.
something else.
That's
Right.
it.
I love it,
Uh-huh.
yeah, because no, I'm always.
Love that part of yourself that was willing to overstep in order to serve.
Mhm.
Love that part of yourself.
Golly, see, that puts a whole,
Yeah.
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 that's what I like about you.
Among other things.
I'll say this, at least you like somebody.
We're here in an individual consciousness movement to love ourselves.
Mm.
That's what we're doing here. And we love